I'm Grant Hardy. You're listening to The Pulse on AMI Audio and wherever you get your podcasts. Today, I'm speaking with accessibility consultant Zachary Weeks from Edmonton, Alberta. Zachary, really excited to chat with you today, and we have a lot to cover, so just want to dive right in. Can you talk about your experience growing up there in Edmonton, Alberta? Some of the expectations that were presented to you from society and how you defied them.
Sure. Well, thanks so much for having me. Growing up in Edmonton or Alberta, it's sort of a mix of small town familiarity and big ambition, if you will. Um,
Mhm.
there's a strong work ethic here. People expect you to put your head down, do the work, and not make too much noise about it. But when you're growing up with a disability, there are also unspoken expectations to stay in the background, accept limitations, to be grateful for whatever access you're given. My family, though, never really subscribed to that, I guess you could say. They raised me with the belief that I had just as much right to take up space, to contribute, and to uh, challenge the system as anyone else would. So defying expectations wasn't really a rebellion per se, although I can be a little bit rebellious, I suppose.
Yeah,
But it was
that's
just
great.
a natural extension of what I was taught.
And that family sport is like so key, isn't it? Especially when you don't
Hmm.
necessarily get those same expectations from the people who should actually uh have higher expectations, like doctors, teachers, other professionals like that. um
Yeah, no,
so
absolutely. And
mhm.
no, go ahead.
Yeah. So you have a website where you have a blog. You talk about some of your accessibility consulting, and one of the highest honors that you mention on your website is being a voice for the voiceless. Can you talk about what you mean by that and why it resonates with you?
Yeah, no, it certainly is the highest honor I think anyone can have. You know, regardless of what space you're in. Being a voice for the voiceless means advocating for people who aren't always heard, not because they don't have something to say, but because the systems in place weren't built to listen to them. And while I do a lot of speaking, I think the real honor actually is creating spaces, where people can speak for themselves. Advocacy for me isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about
Mhm.
opening doors for others to sort of step through or wheel through and take the mic for themselves.
So this is a really cool one, and kind of relates back to not only advocacy but also growing up in Edmonton. For you, can you tell us a little bit about the Zachary Weeks Foundation and the Zac Sac, like what it is and what inspired it?
Yeah, so certainly the Zachary Weeks Foundation, albeit we are very small, we are trying to make an impact abroad. And our primary initiative with that is the Zac Sac, as you mentioned, which is essentially a wheelchair blanket, or sack, if you will, that my mom created when I was a kid. Um, Similar to other kids in Alberta or even Canada for that matter, I wanted to be outside and play with my friends during winter. 6 months of the year were full of snow and ice and all that stuff. So she actually made the first Zac Sac out of a sleeping bag. And since then, we've sort of retrofitted and worked on the design, and now we're handing them out for free to kids that need them.
So does it look kind of like a sleeping bag still? Like how exactly does it work? Maybe address some of the shortfalls that typical winter gear would have for a wheelchair user.
Yeah, so from the perspective of a wheelchair user such as myself, you know, you you try the traditional blanket, if you will, and that's where things go awry pretty quick because your blankets getting caught in the wheels and all this stuff is falling off. So essentially, we it still sort of looks like a sleeping bag, if you will, but it has two loops on it that can hook onto your handlebars on your chair, and then the front opens up. We use snaps to help with you know trying not to use zippers and what have you for those with low hand mobility. And so
Mhm.
yeah, it just wraps around you, snaps up, and it covers you from your feet to, I'd say, your armpits. And yeah, it has a little pocket on it, and away you go.
Keeps you toasty and warm when you're out there playing with your friends in the winter. I mean, if you live in Canada, winter's pretty hard if you don't have the right gear because chances are you're going to be indoors for a good part of the year. What was the impact on you that your mom, your family, instead of just saying like Zachary, stay indoors where you're warm and safe, they like they really went out of the box to design a really cool solution for you.
Yeah, I mean, I really think it comes from the spirit of being a mother. Yeah, back then, early '90s, there wasn't all this cool adaptive, fashion that we have now, which I'm so excited about.
Mhm.
But where there's a will, there's a way, and she saw that there wasn't anything out there, and developed that in the spirit of making sure that I was able to, um, you know, continue to hang out with my friends to the best way possible. Because as I mentioned earlier, like
Mhm.
Canada is like 6 months of the year, maybe eight, depending where you're from. It's winter, so being stuck inside, we all
Yep.
know nowadays what that does to one's health, mentally and physically. So yeah, um, that's sort of how it came
Well,
about.
heck yeah. I mean, part of it is just getting outside, but also I think there's a greater understanding now. I'm curious if you have any thoughts on this. Like, obviously, it's important for people with disabilities to be independent, to have those, be able
Hmm.
to cook, go to school, whatever. But it's also just important to be able to get out and have fun, which sometimes people are more encouraged to just stay inside, be safe. What do you think it means to kids with disabilities to be able to just get out there and have fun in the snow like anyone else?
Well, I think it's an integral part of growing up. Again, we keep talking about snow in Canada, what a theme, right? But it's part of the whole experience of growing up. You know, you shouldn't be limited to seeing your friends or doing your favorite things just because it's a different season. And granted, yes,
Mhm.
it may be safer to stay inside, but it's obviously very limiting. So that's where we see folks using the Zac Sacs in like sit skis and sleds and all that stuff. So it really goes beyond you know just the wheelchair, getting out of your chair and participating
Mhm.
in recreation as well. So any opportunity that we can make sure that the the next generation can participate as fully as possible in society, we're all about it.
So, as you mentioned, one can obtain these for free, which is really cool. What sort of feedback, or have you heard any, really impactful stories from kids, from families who are using this that you want to highlight?
Yeah, no, for sure. So I will maybe add a caveat to them being for free. They're certainly free, but being that we are self funded, we do ask that shipping and handling is covered because we're getting a lot of
Hmm.
requests from across Canada, which is amazing. Um, but nonetheless, um, you know, we want to get them in as many hands as possible. The feedback so
Of
far
course.
has been outstanding. It's the stories that we hear is exactly what we want to fulfill. That we're able to keep kids warm that aren't as mobile as able-bodied folks, and therefore
Mhm.
able to participate more outside. And yeah, everybody loves them. They're made of a heavy denim and fleece and whatnot. So there's three layers to it, so it cuts the wind because that's another factor. But yeah, no, everyone so far has enjoyed them, and they're all handmade
Ah, that's
by my family. So
that's fantastic. Definitely, even folks here on the West Coast probably going to be thinking about that after our uncharacteristic cold spell this winter. Um, so I want to shift and just talk about
mm,
your accessibility consulting work, some of the other work that you do. Can you tell me a little bit about, how you got into this sort of, leadership or advocacy position, and what sort of work do you do?
yeah, so I guess as the thing goes, your role sort of finds you in the universe, if you will. And so, you know, being disabled, I live in each and every day similar to yourself. So we, therefore become the experts of ourselves. And
Hmm.
through volunteering and improving um, my abilities, that sort of led to bigger and bigger things. I think, in terms of the 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 I guess accessibility isn't just my profession; it's my reality. So navigating inaccessible spaces to deal with outdated policies is one thing. I've experienced firsthand what works, what doesn't, and the more I spoke up, the more people came to me for guidance. It started informally, helping businesses understand what true accessibility looks like. But then eventually, I realized, geez, maybe I should get paid for all this wisdom and crappy experiences I've been through
Mm.
throughout my life. And now I work with organizations to make sure that they're not just ticking boxes, but
Hmm.
actually creating inclusive experiences. Because that's often where accessibility goes to, is just, oh, we have a ramp. Yeah, we do. We have, an elevator. Yeah, we do. But accessibility means so much more nowadays, and it's meaningful access. What accessibility is to me isn't accessibility to you, right? So making sure that, and that's one of the things that I really focus on, is making sure that it's not just about me, right? It's leveraging what works
Hmm.
for Grant and what, you know, works for, Peggy or whoever it is, right? So,
What would be can you think of an example of like kind of going beyond just checking the boxes? Do we have a ramp? Do we have this? Do we have that? Like how can someone really create a fully accessible experience that includes everybody? Kind of a
yeah, I mean,
tough question, I guess, but I'm just
unfortunately, yeah, no, I mean, it's a fair question. I think in today's
mm,
uh, day and age, uh, go ahead.
oh no, go ahead. I'm just thinking for myself, it kind of popped into my head like there just some of the AI tools, for example, not even designed um
Yeah,
for blind people, really. It's totally mainstream, but it has some really cool utilities for me. I can describe photos with it and all kinds of stuff. Maybe I'll just ask you this: is are there any highlights or work that you've done that you're especially proud of?
yeah, no, that's a great question. And to your point, I think accessibility now is very much beyond the physical space and into the digital space, as you mentioned, with AI. And I think
Mhm.
there's going to be great opportunities. I'm very, very excited about AI and the positive that it can bring, um, to, equitable access to folks such as yourself, to experience the digital landscape just like those with sight. Not to put you on the spot or anything, but in terms
No, yeah.
of the work that I'm proudest about, yeah, I would say that I'm proud of every win, big or small.
Mhm.
Whether it's getting a company to implement real accessibility changes, helping a young person with a disability land their first job or leadership role, or even just seeing a kid use the Zac Sac for the first time. It all matters, right? So, but if I had to choose, I'd say the work that empowers others to create lasting change is what I'm most proud of. Because at the end of the day, advocacy isn't about me; it's about building a system that works for everyone long after I'm
Yeah.
gone.
Wow. And thank you. Um, what's the most challenging part? I know we kind of talked about, people feeling like they have to make the case just to take up space, or we should be, kind of grateful for whatever we're given. So I'm just curious if that spills into your advocacy role a little bit, like what the most challenging aspect of it is.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's something um, that I get asked a lot. I think because advocacy never stops. It's really more mm, taking care of the mental health side of things, because boy, we can really
Mm,
come up to a lot of barriers in society, whether it's physical or attitudinal. And I think the hardest part is sort of seeing the big picture when you're focused on the border of the picture, right? So
mm,
um, I think just finding that why within you that burns that candle, gets that fire in your belly going, and making sure that it's well fed. Uh, not with barriers, but
hmm.
with self love as well.
And that kind of feeds into my next question too about this is kind of a tough question, but I'll just throw it out there. Do you have any thoughts on how other people with
Hmm.
disabilities can get into this kind of a leadership role? Like, I don't know. I sometimes find advocacy is just really challenging, to be honest, like really draining, even though there's so much I would love to advocate for. And I'm just curious, like, how do you kind of channel that energy into a consulting role like you have? I don't know if you're kind of
Yeah, no,
you know
and
where I'm going with this.
yeah, totally. So I mean, sort of building off of the last, question, like 90% of it's mental, right? So um,
Mm,
first, I think with my journey, because I'm only one perspective, right? But it was really
mhm,
owning who I was, accepting my disability for what it was. I was never gonna be, you know, uh, a hockey player or a
mhm,
musician or whatever. But I owned my expertise, and I think lived experience more than ever is incredibly valuable, and you don't need a title to be a leader. Second, get in the rooms, whether that means joining boards, volunteering, attending city meetings, connecting with businesses, meeting people.
mhm,
The network is where it happens. And third, don't wait for permission. If you see a gap in your community, start the conversation. Leadership doesn't always come with an invitation. You have to create your
mhm.
own seat at the table.
Thank you, and I think that is very valuable advice for not only everyone listening, but I'm definitely going to be implementing some of that in my own journey. Um, so let's talk about 2025 and beyond. Obviously, a lot of stuff happening right now. How do you hope accessibility is going to leap forward this year and beyond? Do you see any like positive changes for signs of new things coming, or I don't know? What are you hoping for this year?
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. We're in such a interesting and unpredictable and quite frankly scary time here in 25. But at the same time, it creates opportunity, as you know, and mentioned earlier with advocacy. It's a grueling process. The work never stops. So I mean, in 2025 and beyond, I think it's integral that we focus on leadership development within the disability community, helping more people step into decision making roles that'll make sure that we're not left behind in all the things that are going on
Mhm.
in today's world. We need love more than ever, I think, and obviously part of that is entrenching that love in stronger policies. In this case, accessibility that actually has teeth. And of course, I'll be working to make sure the Zac Sac
Mm.
reaches as many kids as possible.
Maybe I'm, dare I say, hopeful for Canada, that I don't know, maybe some of the things happening in the world will inspire us to do a little better. I'm not sure. Uh, did you want to add to that at all?
Hmm.
Or
Yeah, no, I think a good example of when we're going through tumultuous times or uncertain times was not too long ago with COVID, right? I mean, everybody was all over the place. We were all
Mhm.
worried about uh, things in the pandemic, and good things came out of that. There was some silver lining wherein remote work is now almost um, you know if you can't work from home, a lot of people say no thanks, right? So from the disability perspective, at least I'm all about that, right? Like, yeah, I
Oh
want to
yeah.
work at home. Whereas before, nobody would say, "Oh yeah, of course." It was like, "Oh no, we couldn't accommodate that. We need you to be in the office or whatever it is." So
All these things that we always get told of, absolutely impossible. Working from home, yeah, in your dreams maybe, and then suddenly it turns around and like, oh, actually, this does kind of work. Zachary, we are out of
yeah,
time, but I
imagine that.
really hope, yes, I really hope to get you back on the show. In the future, we'll put out a link to your blog and website. And thank you so much for chatting with us today.
Well, thank you so much. It's an honor, and yeah, all the best to you and the team over at AMI in 2025.
And likewise to you. Thank you. Thanks again to Zachary Weeks for joining us today. And thank you for listening to The Pulse on AMI Audio and for watching the show on YouTube. This show is also available wherever you get your podcasts.